All right, welcome to March 2nd, Creekside Book by Book, and we are walking through Joshua chapters 13 through 17. And so we have finished most of what is going to be the conquest of the Promised Land. And so today they're going to start doing the distribution of the land for the different tribes and their inheritance. And so we're going to have some opportunities to look at the map. I have a map that I'll share from time to time so we can see where everybody's ending up. And I'm probably not going to read all of the boundary lines because those place names, they're helpful to see where they are. But even on the map that I have, it doesn't have all the names of those boundary lines. And so it might just be more information than we necessarily need to engage with for the text tonight. But then also we're going to see as they are taking the land and distributing the land, there's also evidence in this tonight's passage that they didn't take all the land, which is going to be a problem for the people in the future as they are wrestling with having the Canaanites and their pagan practices still a part of their community in like the larger community, just living next door to each other. And so that's going to cause some problems for the people. So so let's just jump in and we will start in chapter 13, verse 1. When Joshua had grown old, the Lord said to him, "You are now very old," which is just, you are now very old. And there are still very large areas of land to be taken over. This is the land that remains, all the regions of the Philistines, the Geshurites, from the Sihor River onto the east of Egypt to the territory of Ekron on the north, and all the counted Canaanite, all of it counted as Canaanite, though held by 5 Philistine rulers in Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The territory of the Avites is on the south, and all the land of the Canaanites from Ara and Sidonians as far as Aphek and the border of Amorites, the area of Byblos and Lebanon to the east of Baal Gad, below Mount Hermon to Lebo Hamath, as for all the inhabitants of the mountain regions from Lebanon to Misrapoth, Maim, that is all the Sidonians, I myself will drive them out before the Israelites. Be sure to allocate this land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have instructed you, and divide it as an inheritance among the 9 tribes and half of the tribe of Manasseh. All right, so there are some similarities here as we look at Joshua's, the Lord's message here to Joshua. You are very old. He's looking at saying, Joshua, you are at least 80 years old at this point. Your energy is going to be diminishing. And so it's time for you to distribute everything and start setting up the people for the future. So we've had Moses leading the people, and now the next major leader is Joshua. But Joshua is not going to set up a successor for himself. And so the people will actually have their elders and their of all the different tribes will be the leaders. And when we get to the book of Judges, the judges will serve as leaders and rescuers in those books as well. But here the Lord is saying, look at all the land that is still not fully taken. And so I'll start sharing this map now so you can see what's happening here. All right, share. So this is the land, and these are all of the tribes and their inheritances. And so the boundary markers that the Lord is referring to in this passage, this chunk here, it's talking about the south end here along the coast, like Gaza and Ashkelon, Gath, these areas here. They were all Philistine-controlled territories. The Philistines are often called the sea people because it's actually believed that they came from an island like this and came over to the promised land here and settled in this area. And so also in the Philistine lands, we have, this is where Goliath was. And so there may be some more people who are somehow connected to the Anakites, the Nephilim, and those kinds of things. And so these are warrior people. When the people of Israel were coming into the promised land, they were coming up through Kadesh Barnea here, and they said the people are giants. And so this is, if you think about the Philistines, they were big people, and that's exactly where they would have been living, down in this area. So down here is Philistine people, and then up here is where Lebanon is, and Syria are up in this area. And so Mount Hermon is the northern part of the land that's inherited for the people. And so that's kind of the boundary marker that they're talking about here. One of the things that's interesting is, even though the land has not been fully assumed by the people of Israel, they haven't driven out all the inhabitants, the Lord is still telling them to divide it up, and to say, like, that territory that is the Philistine land, that's Judah's land. And so Judah's going to have to go take it. But he also says, I myself will drive them out before the Israelites. And so there is this continuation of what the Lord has started in the conquest of the promised land. The Lord's not saying, I'm going to stop. He wants to continue to do the work. But Joshua is old, and so he wants them to know what to do before Joshua passes away. And so that's the Lord's design, but it really doesn't happen for a long time, that all these inhabitants would be driven out, and then it never really has fully happened. So even when David and Solomon are kings and the kingdom is expanding, there are still these different ethnic groups living in the community, and they're going to create problems for the idolatrous practices of the people. They're going to fall into those things, and that is exactly what the Lord warned them against. And so they're going to gather all the people, and so the divisions of the lands are going to start looking at the east of Jordan. So these sections here, which are it's not sharing anymore. Share screen. Boom. Share. All right. So this is the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias, and this is the Dead Sea. And so all along here is the Jordan River. And so this is the Manasseh folks, and then this is Gad, and this is Reuben. And so they're over here on the east side of the river. And remember, that's because they defeated the Moabites, and they were saying, like, this land is good. And they asked Moses, can we live here? And the Lord said, yeah, they can live there. So verse 8 then picks up talking about that division of the land on the east side of the river. And so it starts, the other half of Manasseh and Reubenites and Gadites had received the inheritance that Moses had given them on the east side, just as the servant of the Lord had assigned to them. It extended from Aror to the Arnon Gorge, and as far down as Dibon, and all the towns of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon on the border of the Ammonites. It also included Gilead, the territory of the people of Gesher and Ma'akah, all of Mount Hermon and Bashan, and as far as Selakah, that is the whole kingdom of Og and Bashan, who reign in Ashtaroth and Edrei. Moses had defeated them and taken over their land, but the Israelites did not drive out the people of Gesher and Ma'akah. So they continued to live among the Israelites to this day. But to the tribe of Levi, he gave no inheritance, since the food offerings presented to the Lord, the God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he promised them. So then it goes into what he gave to Reuben. And as you get to the end of, 16 through 21, and then it says, talking about Moses defeated them, the Midianite chiefs, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, princes allied with Sihon, who lived in that country. In addition to those slain in battle, the Israelites had put to the sword Balaam, son of Beor, who practiced divination. The boundary of the Reubenites was the bank of Jordan. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the Reubenites according to their clans. So I wanted to highlight here that they won these battles, but this is where we see that they had captured Balaam and they executed him as part of this. And remember, Balaam came to curse the people of Israel. He was paid by Balak to try to curse the people of Israel, and they every time he tried to curse them, he actually ended up blessing them. And so it didn't work. But he did then say to them, like, hey, if you would just try to trap them in their temptation. And Balaam is the one who convinced the Midianites to send their women as prostitutes into the tribes into their camp to entice them to sin, and they did, and there was a plague. And so this is where we read what happened to Balaam. Now, Balaam, when we read in Numbers about Balaam, he is leaving, and he actually lives somewhere up this way. And so they captured him before he could leave, is how we should take this. And they actually executed him in the region of Reuben, which is down in the orange section. I keep going back and forth from the map, and I realize that I am not sharing the map when I say up this way. So Balaam is from over here somewhere in the northern area. So he came a long way to come and curse the people. And so they captured him down here in Reuben's territory. And then the tribe of Gad is the next section. And the same kind of thing, the description, defeat of the kings there, and then gets into the tribe, the half tribe of Manasseh, the family descendants of Manasseh according to his clan, the territory extending to Mahanaim and Bashan. And so this is Manasseh, and then where's the other one? There should be two areas for Manasseh. The eastern inheritance, western inheritance is right here in Hatzor and Tiberias and that kind of stuff. So, and so it gets into the Manasseh distribution and defeat the kings again, as you can going through. And verse 32 says, this is the inheritance Moses had given when he was in the plains of Moab across the Jordan east of Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses had given no inheritance. The Lord, the God of Israel, is their inheritance, as he promised them. So here we see the tribes are getting these things, and it keeps saying like the people of Levi did not get any inheritance. We will see that they will get some land, and that will be distributed later. But all of this eastern section, this was all part of what Moses had already distributed and agreed to do before they went to the western part of the west of the Jordan River. And so, but there's still land that remains to be conquered in all of these places. It's not fully, they're not fully settled without the Canaanite influence. So and then it picks up in chapter 14, verse 1. Then we shift over to the western part of the land, and 14:1 says, these are the areas of the Israelites. These are the areas the Israelites received as an inheritance in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel allotted to them. Their inheritance were assigned by lot to the 9.5 tribes, as the Lord had commanded through Moses. Moses had granted the 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of the Jordan, but had not granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest, for Joseph's descendants had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in, with pasture lands for their flocks and herds. So the Israelites divided the land just as the Lord had commanded Moses. All right, so all of this is going to be decided through the casting of lots. And this is part of the Lord's instructions to the people before Moses died, is how they were supposed to do this. And the casting of lots is not just rolling dice. It is saying, Lord, you get to decide who is, you get to decide the decisions here, not us. We're not going to try to put our weight to it. And so it is could be a yes or no kind of dice like thing, like a black stone, white stone. But essentially like drawing down to the ultimate decision. And so all of these different areas are part of the Lord's, just his process of, sorry, got turned around in my pages. There we go. It's all part of the Lord's decision on distributing the land. So, and it's because it's the Lord's decision, we should also recognize that it's not something where like Joshua's like, I got favorites, because his tribe didn't get the biggest pieces of land. And so, so they come together. The priests are helping lead this. Joshua's there. All of the high ups of Israel are here. They're going to do this. But before we get into all of that, we have Caleb. Now, Caleb, remember, was of the 12 spies, Joshua and Caleb were the only two who brought back a positive response. And so Caleb was promised an allotment of land, and that's what verse 6 gets into. Now, the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Then the land had rest from war. All right, so Caleb comes and says, remember what Moses promised me? Now's the time. And I love his just confidence here. Caleb is like, he's 85 years old. He's like, I am as strong as ever. Let me go and take this land. And like when he's saying, let me go and take this land, he's not saying I will do this by myself. He's saying, let me lead my clan to go and take this land. I can do it. I am strong. I am capable, but the Lord has promised me. And he said, wherever you set your foot, the Lord said he's going to give it to me. And so Caleb is continuing to hold on to that faith that he had when he stepped into the land as a spy 45 years earlier and said, yeah, the Lord can help us take this. And so Joshua agrees to do this. And the land that he's taking is Hebron, which is, as he's talking about here, is a part of territory controlled by the people from the Anakites. Now, the Anakites are the descendants of the giants that they were concerned about in the first place. And so Caleb saw the giants. It says, someday I'm going to defeat those giants. And so now he's stepping into that opportunity to do exactly that. And so the Hebron is still actually a part of Israel today. There's still a city called Hebron. It might have moved a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. But let me see if I can zoom in here to show you where it's at. No, it's not on this list here. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Let me share with you. Share screen, map, share. All right, so I zoomed in. So this is part of Judah. And so before the land is actually distributed to any tribe, Caleb is first and Hebron is right here. And so the Philistine, Gath is there, Lachish, Eglon, those were battles that we read about last week. Mount Carmel is right here. And so Mount Carmel is going to be a pretty significant part of the history of the people of Israel. And so, yeah, so it's in this it's on this path, this roadway, and then a kind of in between these hills and mountains. So it's a pretty significant city, and it is filled with giants. So I want to zoom back out now, but it won't let me. All right. So yeah, so that's what he's going to do, and he's going to do it, and he's going to go take the city, and Caleb is stepping into his inheritance, and it says then after that the land knew peace. But we will see that it doesn't. There's more war that's going to happen. So I kind of wonder if when it says they will have peace, it is like Hebron was at peace in that area of land, because there's going to be more conflict in the future as we continue through all of this. So, all right. So then it gets to the allotment of Judah, which is a whole bunch of land. It's all this land here, this red land. And so all of the place names are in here. There is in Judah the city of Jerusalem, and you can read about this in verse 8 of chapter 15. Then it ran up the valley of Ben Hinnom along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem. From there it climbed to the top of the hill west of Hinnom Valley in the northern end of the valley of Rephaim. And one of the important elements here with this is it's called the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem, because even though Jerusalem is in the land that was accorded to or given over to the people of Judah, it was not conquered as part of the land that the people of Israel lived in until David and his reign is when they finally captured Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem is kind of it's closer into the middle of the area. So Jericho, come on, you guys really should. There it is. Okay, let me share this with you. Again, share screen, boom, share. All right, so Jerusalem is right here. Now, if you're looking at this, like that looks like it's part of the Benjaminites, and you are correct. It is a part of their territory right now, but it is ultimately given over to the tribe of Judah, and they are going to take it eventually when David actually goes and conquers the land of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. And then it goes on in this section, as it's talking about in the Judah section, pick up in verse 13. In accordance with the land, with the Lord's command to him, Joshua gave to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, a portion in Judah, Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron. Arba was the forefather of Anak. From Hebron, Caleb drove out the three Anakites, Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai, the sons of Anak. From there, he marched against the people living in Debir, formerly called Kiriath Sefer. And Caleb said, I will give my daughter Aksah in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, took it. So Caleb gave his daughter Aksah to him in marriage. One day, when she came to Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, what can I do for you? She replied, do me a special favor. Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me also springs of water. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. And so this is one of the reasons why I want to read this was we see that Caleb didn't just settle in Hebron, but he continued to drive out more Anakites in other cities. But then also he handed his daughter over as a prize, which again is not like language we probably would use in 21st century, but he handed his daughter over as a prize to the man who would defeat the people in Kiryat Sefer, and this is Othniel, and Othniel is somebody we'll read about again in the book of Judges. And so that's a significant little like forward leaning, like there's more. This guy picks up in the next book as well. And so so then he also gives her family the springs in the Negev. So all right, so then it goes again even more in verse 20 into the inheritance of the tribe of Judah according to its clans. And so there is more city names, which I don't want to read right now, just because Judah, the land of Judah is very large. And so there's a lot of territory that the Lord is giving to them as part of this first lot. And so it goes all the way down to the city of Salt and Gedi. And in verse 63, it says, Judah could not dislodge the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem to this day. The Jebusites live there with the people of Judah. And so this is one more element of the tension that the people are going to experience with the Canaanites still living in the land. So then in chapter 16, we see the allotment for Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, remember, Ephraim and Manasseh are Joseph's sons. So there is no tribe of Joseph because his sons became their own tribes as part of Jacob's blessing in the end of Genesis. He blessed Joseph's sons, but essentially said, I'm going to adopt them to be my sons. And so they are part of the line of Jacob inheritance wise. So that's why they are their own tribes. And so it gets into their divisions here. And so Ephraim and Manasseh, let me share without reading all of the place names again. But so Ephraim is this blue area here, and Manasseh is this area up right here. This is Manasseh and this is Manasseh. Now, when we get into the historical books, there's going to be a point where Israel splits into two different kingdoms, and they call the southern kingdom Judah, the northern kingdom Israel, but they will also call the northern kingdom Ephraim. And that's because Ephraim is this major territory here that is a part of the northern kingdom. And it kind of was the capital of the northern kingdom was in this region. So they just call it Ephraim as a shorthand because they became really the most influential folks. And so, so this division of the land is, excuse me, listed out here. And then in verse 10, we read another familiar phrase. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day, the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. And so they are not driving out all the people, but they are putting them to work in like making them do menial tasks and some kind of forced labor, slavery type thing. Now, this is part of the heartbreak as we read the historical books here. The people of Israel, they used to be slaves, and now we see them pressing people to be slaves as well, which is not great. It's not great to pass on this continuation. And so they should have driven out the people from the land, but they didn't. And so now they're creating this slavery class in these different places where they weren't doing what God told them to do in the first place. Chapter 17 then gets into the allotment for the tribe of Manasseh as Joseph's firstborn. This was Machir, Manasseh's firstborn. And so it goes into how the Machirites were great soldiers. So this allotment was for the rest of the people of Manasseh, the clans of Abiezer, Helek, Asherel, all these people. Now, verse 3, now Zelophehad, son of Hefer, sorry, Okay, yeah. Now Zelophehad, son of Hefer, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons, but only daughters, whose names were Mahlah, Noah, Haglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They went to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders and said, the Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our relatives. So Joshua gave them an inheritance along with the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. Manasseh's share consisted of 10 tracts of land beside Gilead and Bashan, east of the Jordan, because the daughters of the tribe of Manasseh received an inheritance among the sons. The land of Gilead belonged to the rest of the descendants of Manasseh. So we have talked about these daughters of Zelophehad multiple times so far in Numbers and in Deuteronomy. And so we keep getting this promise that these daughters are going to get this land. And here it is, like it's finally happening. They're getting the land, which is awesome. And so when we see this, we should recognize that the Lord is giving land to women, which is because this person didn't have any sons. And so there is a motivation in the land to maintain family lines as part of the inheritance. And so they did not want to lose their identity as part of the family of Israel. They didn't want their father's name to be blotted out. And so there's this protection and provision clause here. And so here's when it finally is given to the people who it has been promised to. And so then it goes on to talk about the territory of Manasseh in verse 7 and going all throughout the different areas in the western part of Manasseh. So again, this is the yellow parts here. This is western inheritance of tribe of Manasseh right here. And so all of the place names through chapter 7 through 10 are talking about that. And then it gets into talking about Issachar and Asher. Manasseh had some land into their areas too. So Issachar is this pink one here, and Asher is the brown one up here on the coast. And so so that is the people of Manasseh kind of crept up into their lands as well. Yet, verse 12, the Manassites were not able to occupy these towns, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that region. However, when the Israelites grew stronger, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive them out completely. So again, this is a continued theme. They weren't able to do what God was calling them to do, and so they decided to do something else to put these people into forced labor. Then verse 14 says, the people of Joseph, so the people of Joseph being Ephraim and Manasseh, said to Joshua, why have you given us only one allotment and one portion for an inheritance? We are numerous people, and the Lord has blessed us abundantly. If you are so numerous, Joshua answered, and if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and the Raphaites. The people of Joseph replied, the hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots fitted with iron, both those in Beth Shan and the settlements, and those in the valley of Jezreel. But Joshua said to the tribes of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, you are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forested hill country as well. Clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out. And so the people of Manasseh and Ephraim are saying, our land is too small, our tribe is too big, that's not fair. And so Joshua is like, we'll go clear some more land, cut down some forests, build a city there, great, do it. But then they're like, but there's people there, and they're strong and they're scary. And Joshua's response is, go fight them. You are numerous. And earlier, we have seen how the Lord drives the enemies out and fights for the people. And so Joshua is trying to help them to like see God will do this for you, but they are unwilling to do that. And so they have this ongoing battle with the people of Israel, with the Canaanites who stayed in the land. And so yeah, so that's where we're going to stop tonight, because next week there's more of it. So this is a little shorter than we've done in the past, but didn't read all the place names. And so I thought I'd cut us all a break of hearing me try to pronounce ancient names that I can't say very well. So any questions on this portion of the text tonight?
Does it ever talk about how many casualties the Israelites had when they were battling?
Their only time that we actually read about the Israelites losing their own casualties is in Ai. So they, because that was their disobedience, and the Lord allowed them to lose people in battle. But yeah, that's the only time in the book of Joshua where we read anything about the Israelites losing people. So
when they were being told to go up into these hills and clear it and not be afraid of these chariots, they shouldn't have been afraid because they weren't having casualties.
well, yeah, well, that's one way to read it. The other way is we just don't, we're not told if they had casualties, but like, you know, they're not. The thing about the Bible that is interesting is like it's not afraid to show their failure, right? So if they had casualties, then of a significant amount, then they would have written that down, because the Lord has led them to write down loss of life throughout the wilderness, the plagues and all these different things. But yeah, they should have, we would anticipate a body count, right? But we're not given any other than in Ai. So yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, Chris, you're right. They should have trusted the Lord, bottom line. But I wonder, part of what I'm wondering in like human nature, Joshua's old, and the Lord is saying like, you're old, you should start dividing this stuff up. And I wonder if the people are also tired, you know, because sometimes you go and go and go for so long and you just, I don't know if I can go any farther. And the victories that you had in the past might seem like almost impossible if you've got one more ahead of you. And so there may be morale issues, there may be laziness, I don't know, but their inability to complete the conquest is going to be a problem all throughout the historical books in the Old Testament. So, which is a bummer. They had so much promise, so much potential. Yeah. What's that, Carrie?
Yeah. Sorry. Hang on. Oh, I thought I had it muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I thought you were asking a question. So,
no, it's like so much for a grain, faith, a grain of a mustard seed.
Yeah, well, that has not been said to them yet. So that's in the New Testament. So
like,
they don't know about that.
The lines are being blended there.
Yeah. Yeah, they have not heard Jesus's call there. So yeah. So far, we've only talked about the East Manasseh, Gad, Reuben, and West Manasseh, Ephraim, and Judah. Really, those are the only tribes that we've talked about their distribution. So we have quite a few left that we'll go over next week, or not next week, the week after, because next week I'm actually going to be in Houston on Wednesday, so I won't be here. So yeah, so there will be more of land taking and distributing in the next time we're together. But yeah, the second half of Joshua is not as much fun as the first half to read. Just there's no way around it. So yeah. Any other questions?
Good question, honey.
No? All right. I really am enjoying this map. This atlas in my Bible software is rad. So as we are talking about, so next week we'll get into like Levitical cities and cities of refuge and stuff, but there's a map of the incomplete areas here that they don't take. And so let me show you what those are. Let me share this. Share screen, share. All right, so these flags are all the cities that they did not take the land all the way. So these are strongholds for the Canaanites, essentially. And so, yeah, so there are many throughout the land. And so, yeah, so we saw Jerusalem, Gaza, and they did not get into Dan yet. So, but then what's interesting though, what I find interesting is as we look at this, like the land, this is the Western tribes, right? The Eastern tribes doesn't say they didn't take any of the land. They were much more, maybe much more motivated at this point. They like completely wiped out people over on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And so there aren't as many strongholds over here. But as we read the history of the people of Israel, these folks drift away. They are not they're not a major part of the story for a long time. And so there was something about not crossing to the other side of the Jordan that was to their detriment. So, all right. So let me stop sharing that. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, then we can call it a night.
So when you say drive them out, do you mean drive them out or kill them?
It could be two things, could be both, but so they, at minimum, they were supposed to displace the people. So that was the minimum. But on the eastern side, they destroyed the cities. They killed the people. They wiped out all the fighting men. So like that was it. That was part of what God was telling them to do, and that would have been the best solution in quotes for them on the west side as well. But they couldn't. And so, yeah, so they were not fully faithful. And
so they were supposed to annihilate them?
Yeah, I'm essentially, yeah.
Not drive them to another area. They were supposed to kill them.
Well, that would have been the most complete way to eliminate the threat of idolatry and pagan practices, to purge the land of their sinfulness, all of the things that the Lord told them, like why they're doing this conquest, was because of the sinfulness of the Canaanites. So so they should have completely eliminated the people. And yeah, so it's I mean, people would call it genocide today, and that's one of the hard things about the Bible here is like, oh, I don't like this very much. So yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? Just wrapping up on genocide is kind of a bummer. So
Well, it does seem odd that they came from a slavery background and they are enslaving other people.
right.
Talk about a mind twist set,
Yeah. And yeah, we will see later when Solomon's building the temple, he forces people into labor. His descendants, his son, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, they both press people into forced labor, and they start pressing in their own people into forced labor. And so that's not the kind of like you owe a debt and so you commit yourself to pay off that debt to that family. This was like Rehoboam and Jeroboam both were like, no, you have to do this. I'm the king. And so, yeah, the people of Israel are far from perfect in the Bible. So, yeah, the way they treat the poor, the vulnerable, the foreigner among them, all of those things is some of the harshest critical words that the prophets have for the people of Israel in the future as well, saying, just pointing out like their hypocrisy and their just destruction of other people's lives. In particular, the quartet of the vulnerable. So, yeah, it's tough. It is not easy. It's not easy reading to watch these things happen. So, yeah. All right.
And later on, when they didn't take over all the territory, that just astounds me. I mean, yes, I can fall into that, gosh, be like, oh, I'm scared. But they've seen God do all these miracles all along.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why they're called to set up the monuments throughout the land, is like, this is what God has done. This is how he has provided for us. And so they're supposed to be able to go to these monuments and say, remember what God has done. But people forget. It's easy to drift off of the faithfulness of the Lord. So that's one of the reasons why like reading the Bible is important for us today, because we're not seeing these kinds of miracles in our lives, right? Like, I don't know of anybody who saw a whole wall fall down and then you defeated a city in my life. I don't know anybody who had that experience. But when we read the Bible and we see, oh, this is what God can do, then our struggles and our challenges are things that's like, oh, God can help me through this. God can help me endure this. God can lead me. He can defeat these enemies that I have, that could be my own temptation, my own sinfulness, those enemies, those addictions, all these different things. God can defeat that. But we need to remember that he is mighty and that he desires to rescue his people. So, but when we forget, we drift, we fall into, we'll see a lot in Judges, a lot of drift, a lot of people doing whatever they saw fit in their own eyes. So, but yeah.
Phrase we'll hear a lot in that book.
Yeah. In those days, Israel had no king, so everyone did what they saw fit in their own eyes. Yeah. So the king in Israel is important to help the people like know what to do, but the goal, it seems early on in the people of Israel, is that the Lord would be their king. And so that was hard for them too, to not have a king. Yeah.
The Judges kind of make me think of the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm taking the control in my own hands in a kind of scenario.
Yeah, you're not far off, Carrie. So it's gonna be it's gonna be wild. I love the Book of Judges, so I'm excited to get there. But it is wild. It's a wild book. So yeah. All right, y'all. Well, let's wrap it here, and then we'll come back. So next week I will be on an airplane on my way back when we would normally be in group. So yeah, so we won't meet next week, but then we'll come back the following week, which would be the 9th, 16th. We'll be back on the 16th. So, all right.
May I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Again, going back to where the Philistines, the island that you talked about, where was that at? I was kind of trying to look, but I was also, yeah, you had said that they were sea people?
Oh, it doesn't say this in this passage.
No.
So the Philistines, it says they came from the sea in other parts of the Bible. And so they could be the sea people, these Philistines. And so let me zoom out here. So what they could be talking about, let me share this.
Does that mean localized sea?
Well, it's the Mediterranean Sea, is what we're looking at here. And so it could be a island off of like the coast somewhere, a smaller island, or it could be like, this is Cyprus, right? Yeah, that's Cyprus. So they could be coming off of Cyprus, or they could also be coming from somewhere up north and following the coastline down and ending up here. But they are somehow people from the sea is kind of what the scriptures talk about the Philistines. So they're this potential mix of like Anakites and the sea people like intermarrying. So yeah, the Philistines they're going to be a real fun bunch in the coming months. So oh man. So all right, everybody, let's call it, and we'll be back on the 16th. So have a great week.
You also.
Hey.
All right, bye.
Right, thanks.
You bet.